Welcome back. MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be looking at the weekly metagame breakdown for the Explore format. So we are going to be looking at best of 3 for this particular video. Covering off the best of 3s right now, and then we'll revisit best of 1 in the coming days as well for Historic as well as Explore. So notable thing in terms of news, if you've missed it, we are getting Pioneer Horizon, or not Horizons, Pioneer Remastered set release on Arena. Basically, it's a draftable set coming with a bunch of the missing cards. They said something it'll be like 99% true to tabletop. So we should be getting a lot of the missing cards. Like Hidden Strings was already spoiled. I'm assuming Bring to Light. Boros Charm was already announced as part of Foundations. So hopefully we get closer to Explorer being Pioneer and we update the name of these videos. But for the time being at least, let's look at what this format currently is. We're going to get the data from Untapped GG, what you see on the screen, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client. Aggregates user win rates because a whole bunch of cool stats, so we will take it from there. And we're going to start with the popularity of decks, what's kind of the metagame distribution, and then we'll look at the win rates of decks. I'm only doing it for the last week, so the number of games for some of these will be kind of low. So focus less on necessarily like the win rate when we look at some of them, kind of just group it by tiers. So you'll see some like 90% win rate, but it's only about like 25 games, which sample size is a little low, but it kind of gives us an outlook in terms of what's being played by folks. I want to kind of show all the viable options that people are winning with. And we're going to look down into Mythic Rank. So to start things off, we have the popularity. So the 5-color Enigmatic is about 10%. Phoenix coming in at 9. The Demons deck, Mono Black Demons, your standard deck, now has a home Pioneer or Explore, 8.4%. The Rakdos aggro, which is like mono red, splash some black cards, aggro deck. Selesnya Devotions, mono green devotion with Ella Schnorn. Greasefang's had an increase thanks to FOMO, as well as the new Black Overlord. Rakdos mid, 4%. Azorius Control, 4%. So just kind of looking at the play rates, Enigmatic was pretty high, as well as the Rakdos aggro. Both were peaking at about 20%. We see them kind of decline, an increase of the Mono Black Demons deck, and then it kind of normalized as well. So we're seeing spikes as these new decks kind of come into popularity, and then things normalize as they kind of move past the flavor of the week. So we're going to look for the last month, but it covers a good mix of decks. We haven't been doing Explorer as frequent for the last little bit, so I think just looking right now, it gives us a good spread. We got quite a few decks here that are fairly new. I'm kind of happy with what the spread is, so we're going to look at that. 38,000 games played. Highest win rate deck is the Enigmatic deck, 86%. Again, focus less on this, more around tiering. Big thing that we got with Duskmourn is the Overlords. They're both an enchantment as well as a 2 durable target, and they allow you to cast the impending side to get it on curve. So going something like Impending, the Overlord of the Hauntwoods, into Enigmatic lets you sack this to either find like Overlord of the Boiler Bridges, for example, which is curved there. You have Heliod, Beza. There's a few different configurations. These decks are toolboxy, so keep that in mind. You can kind of configure what you want your targets to be. You'll usually see like Titan and Atraxa on the top end. And then this one's opting to go more like burn package. You got ley lines in here. Heliod can rebuy stuff. Zerg can animate stuff. Some of the kind of toolboxy elements. Skyclave is removal. Knight is kind of flexible removal. You have Fable kind of piece together the deck. Aelia's Presence fixes your mana and can be sacked and replaces a stealth. Nowhere to Run's removal. That can then also be used. High Noon to slow down like Phoenix, stuff of that nature. A bunch of removal, and then just kind of tutor into your pieces. The Orion deck, Fatal Push for removal, Thoughtseize for hand hate, so it's just kind of screwing up the Fatal Pushes against control-ish style decks, mid-range decks, Thoughtseize, Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate, Knockout Blow for the aggressive red decks. Nimble Larcenist, 3 mana, 2/1, enters the battlefield, you reveal. Enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand, you choose an artifact, instant, or sorcery, so kind of a Thoughtseize style creature. Path is a sweeper along with temporary lockdown, Buzz Crusher to deal with. More importantly, going forward, it can deal with Lotus, but it can deal with Nykthos right now. Thought Distortion for the kind of control counter heavy deck. Moving on, we go to, they're calling it 5-color Transmogrify. It's Rakdos Transmog. This one's at 85%. For this deck is you're just making tokens, targeting them with Transmog, hitting Atraxa as kind of your big finisher. Ob makes tokens, Fable makes tokens, Bankbuster makes token, Case of the Stash Skeleton. You have Fountain Port as well as Mutavault all kind of play into that effect, help you kind of chain it in. Otherwise, it's just a Rakdos kind of control-ish deck, hand hates between Thoughtseize Duress, bunch of cheap removal options, kind of scattered into there for you to kind of go off. And got the Companion, hand hate, cheap removal, dampening sphere against Storm or Nykthos, graveyard hate, hand hate and graveyard against like Sack and decks like that. You have Hidetsugu against a low to the curve decks. Urbrass Forge against the heavy kind of control-y matchups as well. Pretty good against like the black base decks. They don't really have an answer to this. An Extinction Event as a sweeper. Very good against mono green, for example. Moving on, we go to, they're calling it Grixis Creativity. So these decks are always like because of the piece that you find, but this is Izzet Creativity. So notably not going for the combo element of World Spineworm, instead going to Valgavoth. Theoretically, you could just play Transmog because most of the time you're just going to be doing one copy. But with this deck here, you can also leverage treasure tokens like Prismari and stuff like that to target. Lets you also target multiple things in case they blow up one of them. So Valgavoth is the target that kind of comes out. This one here is a control deck. Shark Typhoons, Fables to kind of play that game. A Phantom Interference counter that makes a token. 3 steps can make copies, draw, discard kind of effect. Again, Fountain Port in here as a or utility land. Null kind of has some extra value against Enigmatic, Rending Volley, green and white, or sorry, blue and white stuff. Narset's Reversal for like Thought Distortions, counter spells, discard effects. Cheap counters and negates, as well as Mystical Dispute, Anger for a sweeper, Ashiok for anything tutoring, good against the Enigmatic deck, Exile's Graveyard versus Phoenix kind of effects. Narset or like anything heavy card draw, and then against control matchups, decks with counters, you can bring in the Hullbreaker. Moving on, we go to Jund Sacrifice. So Rakdos Sack with the Yurga. This one's at 80%. So this deck here is your traditional Rakdos Sack, but it does have an infinite combo. If you have Yurga out and a cat in play and a cat in the graveyard, they can basically treat each other as food, sack, and get them back into play. Just cycle that to drain out your opponent. You're able to kind of mill into the combo with Scavenger's Talent, and then also with the last mode, rebuy Yurga. Otherwise, pretty stock, Mayhem Devils, Fables, stuff of that nature. And the Companion, Chandra's Defeat for red decks, Haywire Might, Artifact Enchantment hate, Thoughtseize for hand hate, Molten Collapse can be removal as well. With Descend, you can hit certain types of graveyard hate or pieces like that. Top Hatch Formation, flexible, all-around removal, can deal with like an Atraxa, can deal with enchantments, can also just draw you cards and create food in a pinch. Graveyard hate, Logan's Command, another flexible card. Artifacts, discards, removal, rebuy, and then Omnixus for the Mono Black Demons, 80%. So we have Bloodletter combo with Slasher. We have Archfiend in here. We have Unholy Annex to drain and gain, get you card advantage. You have 8/6/6 demons in here. So the Mono Black like Waste Not deck is kind of ported over to this deck here now. Bunch removal, hand hate options, just grindy him out. And then cool thing here, on your end step with the Unholy Annex trigger, you can animate Mutavault. Just pay 1 mana and then activate it itself, even though it's tapped. It counts itself as a demon, so you get to drain that way. That's pretty sweet. Hand hate, Sweeper and Meathook Massacre, Graveyard hate, hand hate and exile, Liliana for the control midrange mirrors. Path as a sweeper, Withering Torment, very useful against the Enigmatic decks, as well as Invoke to kind of go over the top. 4-color Legends. So this is a an infinite combo. With Relic of Legends, we've seen these kind of Logurk style decks, but the core of the deck is you basically want to get a cost reduction on Azorius in a way that you can keep casting it, bouncing it to your hand over and over again. So you're able to do that with things like Relic of Legends, Gwenna, taps on taps to generate enough mana to cast this if you get the discount. With Relic out, you can, with the trigger on the stack, tap it for mana itself, which is kind of cool. So you get that value there. Bontu's reduces its cost. This also works as a piece of the combo as well. You could drain and gain, but you just keep going into the dungeon and eventually drain them out that way there. Rona kind of pieces into it, the tap on tap effects to generate mana, and in the extra mana, and then attracts it on the top end. A lot of clicking in this deck. Removal, hand hate, kind of flexible removal. Back to nature if you're in a green deck, really good against enigmatic decks. Graveyard hate, and then frill back flex. Graveyard hate can be enchantment or artifact hate. Mono white humans. So they're pretty stock humans list. We're seeing a couple new cards being tried out. Veteran Survivor, 2/1 that can then eat away at the graveyard. Warden of the Inner Sky, another way with the Convoke style effects to get some value, give you flyers. A way to tap this without having to attack. Only Adeline as your 3-drop, and then you have Wandering Rescuer on the top end effect as well. Some of these decks are splashing blue for Mockingbird. Very effective when you have things like Thalia's Lieutenant or a big creature just to give it flying. Portable Holes for removal along with Get Lost. Invasions, kind of like a Thoughtseize effect. Graveyard Hate and Rest in Peace, and Wedding Announcement for the heavy removal match. Selesnya Company, 77%. So Collected Company. Keep in mind, if you don't have Collected Companies, there's rare versions. You don't have to craft the mythic ones. This is a special guest. But this deck here is kind of adopting the Enduring Innocence. So you'll see a lot of 3s here, kind of complemented by your 8 elves to kind of go turn 1, turn 2, any of these. Innocence kind of fuels the deck in terms of card advantage. You have a bunch of removal effects with like Skyclave and Werefox. Arcan can tax like mana bases of your opponents and make so they can only cast 1 spell per turn. Eat away at their hand with Anointed Peacekeeper, tax them with Thalia. Even Interrupter can kind of pseudo counter things on the stack. Ellen's more card advantage. Dromoka's command can deal with enchantments or be a fight effect in the deck. Removal, more fight, removal, enchantment hate, stuff like that. Licensors for graveyard hate, hand hate, more creature removal, kind of Thoughtseize effect, more creature removal. Elspeth, as well as Wandering Emperor for the grindier match. Rakdos aggro, 77%. So Slickshot and friends. Got the mouse package here like we're seeing in standard, notably only 2 Slickshot in this one. That's interesting. Infuriates, pump effects, some Thoughtseize for removal, Kumanos, Monstrous Rage. Just pump up your stuff, try to kill them as fast as possible, fling them at your opponent. Claim Fame can reanimate stuff as well as give them haste, which is more Fatal Push, Reckless Rage. You'll sometimes see Reckless Rage in the main board. Just another way to kind of have a targeted effect for Valiant as well as kill your opponent's stuff. Hand Hate and Thoughtseize, Feed the Swarm, Unlicensed Hearse as Graveyard Hate. I don't like Hazoret in the list. Against like, the theory is you bring it in against like Control, but they have so much white-based exile removal. Black we saw has like Invoke Despair. They can have Edict effects. It's a lot of mana as well. The deck itself is playing 20 lands. I prefer just playing a third forward. To be honest, that's how I'm playing it in my list and paper. We have Mardu Greasefang, 72%. So a couple cards that got added to the deck. We got Fear of Missing Out. Draw, discard can give you extra combat steps. We also have Overlord of the Balemark, self-mill into finding combo pieces, which is nice. You have Skyship, Parhelion that you target with Greasefang, give him haste and kind of pop off. This you can get extra combat steps with FOMO as well, which Delirium should be pretty easy in this deck. Nahiri is another way to draw discard with the deck. Up to the next turn, up to 1 target creature attacks a player each combat if able. Exile target creature equipment with mana value less than loyalty from your graveyard. Create a token copy of it that gains haste. Another way to kind of reanimate Greasefang as well, which is kind of cool. I own this card in paper. I bought the pieces for Greasefang originally, for the Mardu version, and then these cards came out, so kind of ahead of the curve. Duress for hand hate, Portable Hole for removal, Cathar Commando is a creature that can then blow up artifacts and enchantments. And the grindier matchups, if they're attacking your graveyard a lot, you can just become like a Mardu mid-range deck. With like Bankbusters, you got a bunch of cheap removal, Katsuo's Flanker, can deal with graveyards, Obnixis for like the grind element. Izzet Phoenix, 70%. So a lot of the decks have adopted artists' talent. Talents really have made an impact across the board. So first mode, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may discard a card if you do draw. This just adds further velocity to the deck. Draw, discard, help you dig further to getting Phoenixes into your graveyard. Plays nicely with Prof's Edict because you can put more counters on it. But the core of the deck, get Phoenix into the graveyard and then play 3 spells and then get it back. Bounce with like Brazen Boar, Pick Lock helps you mill. This version is interesting because it's playing no Ledger Shredder, which is kind of cool. Usually you'll see Ledger Shredder, but this one's just opting to go full talent here. Kind of mixed into there, bunch of cheap effects, card draw, removal, stuff like that. But this one's only got 18 lines. Also kind of interesting. You'll usually see like Hall of the Storm Giant above in some of these lists. Annul for the enchantment decks, Braid, Artifact Hate, as well as removal. So just like flexible cards here. Cheap counters, Proft if they go heavy on the graveyard. Crackling Drake, Brazen Borer, another card you can bounce their hate piece and then just kind of combo off in a way of just like Phoenix, Sweepers with Anger, and Mono Green Devotion. So no Karn stuff anymore, but you got Leyline of the Guild Pack. You kind of go off Leyline early with Sunken Citadel, could generate a whole bunch of mana with a Nykthos since you do. Core of the deck, just draw a bunch of cards, make a bunch of mana. Outcaster, Trailblazer, Kiora, both draw you cards. Kiora can tap and tap. You have battles to help you dig as well. Mana Storm the Festival, top in. I don't love this split, but you should probably be playing 4 Cavaliers, is my guess, or some of these. But the core is you generate enough mana for the turn, you can play Uvenwald Oddity, transform it, and give your entire. Pick your poison as a cheap kind of way to deal with artifacts, enchantments, and flying. You might want to even look at Paw Patch formation since it's targeted, which can help. Monstrous Emergent as a fight effect that doesn't require you to have a creature to play. Stone Brain for combos. Graveyard Hate. Sharpshooter, another way to deal with artifacts and enchantments. Assassin Petitioner as a way to gain some life. Hellish Norn for heavy decks. Merkle for kind of. Azorius Control, 68%. So close. Look at this. 68.1 with 69 games with almost 6.9 minutes. We almost had the triple nights. So this version here is Kahira. Sometimes you'll see Yorion, sometimes you won't. Wandering Emperor, Teferi is kind of mixed in. High Noon has been adopted by some of these decks to deal with heavy. Good against the Rakdos deck, like the aggro deck, because it can a bunch of spells. Phoenix, it shuts off like the Phoenix draws, but counters, removal, win with a Planeswalker, like Fountain Port, Restless Anchorage, win with a Kahira. Aether Gust, green and red hate, Veto's cheap counter, Reckoner Bankbuster for card advantage, and win con. Graveyard Hate, cheap counters, heavy draw decks, Beza against aggressive decks, kind of range decks. Hullbreaker Horror for control mirrors. And then we got Ninja, 65%. So Kaido's kind of unlocked some of the ninja strategies. These aren't the buffed ninjas that we have in Historic, but cheap evasive creatures, Fairy Miscreant, Mockingbird style effects. Flood Pits taps down creatures to kind of get you in. What you want to do is sneak in and attack Ninja out Kaido, and then start embleming to make your ninjas bigger. A Mockingbird could copy some of your other creatures. Kaido is another way here. Makes an unblockable ninja token, draw discard for value. Brazen Borer is kind of replacing that rogue deck. Cheap counters, like cheap removal, big things. The Cody Silencer can be a Thoughtseize style effect. Full form licensors, Graveyard Hate, and for the week. Let me know what you think, what you've been enjoying in the format. We'll catch you next time.